The millionaire thought he was in the arms of his beloved wife, but at dawn the blood on the bed revealed a terrible truth. His wife's jealous twin sister had planned every detail of that forbidden night. If you love love stories and romance, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment telling us where you're listening from. Stay tuned. The rain beat against the windows of the simple apartment in Brooklyn, New York, as Emily Clark watched the video on her phone for the 10th time. It was Rebecca, her twin sister, descending the marble staircase of a luxurious mansion, wearing a wedding dress that cost more than Emily earned in 2 years. Rebecca's radiant smile pierced her chest like glass. Next to her, Nathan Bradford, the most powerful man in national real estate, looked at her with an adoration that made Emily feel nauseated with envy. 28 years had passed since their father, an influential businessman, decided to keep only one of his daughters. Rebecca, the chosen one, grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, attended the best schools, learned French and piano. Emily was sent to Rochester, raised by Aunt Helen, a bitter woman who never forgave her niece for existing. While Rebecca collected diplomas and wealthy boyfriends, Emily worked as a receptionist in a small office, saving every penny to one day find her sister. When she finally got the address of the mansion in Westchester County, Emily spent months observing the family's habits. She discovered that Nathan traveled frequently for work, that Rebecca practiced Pilates 3 times a week, and that the couple rarely received visitors. More importantly, she discovered that Rebecca had mentioned in interviews having a twin sister who grew up far away but whom she loved very much. It was her opportunity. The call to Rebecca was carefully calculated. Emily cried on the phone, telling of a failed marriage to a violent man, accumulated debts, and a desperate need for help. Rebecca, always generous, didn't hesitate to offer shelter. "Come home, my sister. We have so much to talk about," she said in a sweet voice. Emily hung up the phone with a cold smile on her lips. In her first days at the mansion, Emily observed everything with hungry eyes. The couple's routines, the affectionate touches between them, the way Nathan looked at Rebecca as if she were a goddess. During breakfast, he kissed his wife's forehead before leaving for work, a simple gesture that made Emily grind her teeth with desire. She wanted that for herself, wanted to be looked at that way, wanted to feel those lips on her skin. Nathan, for his part, treated Emily with distant cordiality. He ensured she had lawyers to resolve her pending divorce issues, offered a generous allowance, and asked if she needed anything else. But Emily wanted much more. She began to study every detail about him, how he held his whiskey glass at 6 in the evening, how he loosened his tie when he arrived tired, how his voice became hoarse when he was frustrated with some business. She memorized his perfumes, his expressions, his quirks. At night, when the couple retired to their bedroom, Emily walked the corridors of the mansion like a ghost. She knew every floorboard that made noise, every shadow that could hide her. Sometimes she stood in front of the couple's bedroom door, listening to the intimate whispers, the muffled moans, imagining herself in Rebecca's place. Other times she stole small personal objects from Nathan, a pen, a handkerchief, a cufflink. She kept everything in a box hidden in her room, like trophies from a war that had not yet begun. The opportunity arose when Nathan needed to travel to Dubai to close $1 million deal. It would be a 2-week trip, and Rebecca decided not to accompany him due to social commitments in New York. The night before his departure, Emily observed the couple saying goodbye in the entrance hall. The lingering kiss, the words of love, whispered, the promise of daily calls. When Nathan finally left, Rebecca sighed and went up to her room, leaving Emily alone with her dangerous thoughts. During the following 2 weeks, Emily intensified her metamorphosis. She spent hours in Rebecca's own beauty salon, adjusting haircuts, makeup tones, even the way she walked. She stole her sister's perfumes, studied her expressions in the mirror, practiced her handwriting until she could imitate it perfectly. When Nathan called, Emily stayed nearby, listening to the conversations, learning the exact intonation of Rebecca's voice, her laughter, her expressions of affection. The plan began to form in her mind like a dark symphony. Nathan would return, tired, possibly having drunk during the flight. It would be late at night, Rebecca would be asleep, and Emily would be waiting. The night Nathan returned from Dubai was perfect for Emily's plans. A storm was sweeping through New York, and the thunder muffled any sound that might betray her movements through the mansion. Rebecca had taken a stronger sleeping pill, complaining of insomnia caused by the anxiety of her husband's absence. Emily waited until she was sure her sister was deeply asleep before putting her plan into action. She wore the wine-red silk nightgown she had seen Rebecca wear so many times, sprayed the French perfume on her wrists and neck, and let down her hair the same way her sister liked. In the bathroom mirror, the resemblance was frightening. 2 weeks of meticulous preparation had paid off. Even she confused herself with her own reflection. Nathan's flight was delayed, 3 hours due to the storm. When he finally arrived at the mansion, it was 2 in the morning. Emily heard the sound of the key in the lock, the heavy footsteps in the entrance hall, the dragging of tired feet up the stairs. He was exhausted. She could tell by the slow rhythm of his movements. Perfect. She lay down in the couple's bed, positioning herself exactly as she had seen Rebecca do so many times. When Nathan opened the bedroom door, Emily pretended to be asleep. He approached slowly, trying not to wake who he believed to be his wife. The smell of whiskey and weariness emanated from him, mixed with the masculine perfume that Emily had secretly learned to love. "My princess," Nathan murmured, sitting on the edge of the bed. His hands found Emily's hair, caressing it tenderly. "I missed you so much." His voice was hoarse, laden with desire and genuine love. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. It was exactly how she had imagined it during all those years of loneliness. She moved slightly as if she were awakening, and murmured his name with the same intonation she heard Rebecca use. Nathan smiled in the dark, leaning in to kiss her. When his lips touched hers, Emily had to control herself not to moan with pleasure. It was her first kiss from Nathan, but she needed to pretend it was just one among thousands. His hands explored, her body with familiarity, knowing every curve, every sensitive spot. Emily surrendered completely, allowing him to believe he was loving his wife. When Nathan penetrated her, the pain was intense, but she embraced it as if it were a prize. Finally, she was having what had always been Rebecca's. Finally, she was being loved by that man. The act was silent, only whispers and breathless breathing in the dark. Nathan moved with contained passion, like a man who had spent 2 weeks away from the woman he loved. Emily recorded every second. In her memory, every touch, every sweet word he whispered in her ear. This was the moment she had waited for her entire life. When they finished, Nathan embraced her tenderly, kissing her sweaty forehead. "I love you so much," he murmured, and Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. They weren't tears of regret, but of triumph. She had done it. She had stolen a piece of the love that belonged to her sister. Nathan fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the trip and the encounter. Emily remained awake, observing his relaxed face in the half-light. He was even more handsome when he slept, his severe features softened by rest. She wanted to engrave that image forever in her memory. When the first rays of sun began to filter through the curtains, Emily knew she had little time. Soon, Nathan would wake up and discover the truth. But she didn't care. She had gotten what she wanted. She had tasted the love her sister received every day, had felt the warmth of that body against hers, had heard the words of love she dreamed of hearing. The morning light revealed the bloodstains on the white sheet, betraying her lost virginity. Emily smiled with satisfaction. It was the physical proof of her victory, the permanent mark that she had been there, that she had taken something that could never be returned. Nathan woke slowly, still drowsy. His eyes focused on the red stains on the sheet, and Emily saw the exact moment when realization hit him. Horror spread across his face like a devastating wave. He turned to her, and Emily met his eyes with a triumphant smile. "Good morning." "My love," she said in a sweet voice, using exactly the same intonation Rebecca would use. But there was something different in her eyes, something Rebecca would never have. It was the cold gleam of revenge finally realized. The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan remained motionless, his eyes fixed on Emily as if she were a ghost materialized in his bed. His hands trembled slightly and she could see the panic growing in his chest. He tried to speak, but the words died in his dry throat. Emily took advantage of the moment of shock to move closer to him, resting her hand on his bare chest. "You don't need to say anything," she whispered, perfectly imitating Rebecca's sweet voice. "I understand." But her eyes shone with an intensity that had never existed in her sister's gaze. It was hunger, triumph, and a dark satisfaction that made Nathan instinctively recoil. He got up abruptly, putting on his pants with mechanical movements. His mind struggled to process what had happened. Guilt began to spread through his chest like acid, corroding every fiber of his being. He had betrayed Rebecca, the woman he loved more than life itself, with her own sister, and worse. He had enjoyed it. He had desired every second. Emily observed his reactions with fascination. She had never seen such a powerful man completely destroyed. Nathan Bradford, who commanded business empires and made decisions that affected thousands of people, was there, naked and vulnerable before her. It was intoxicating. "This can't happen again," he finally managed to say, his voice hoarse and desperate. "Never again." But even as he spoke, his eyes betrayed the lie. There was a flame lit in him now, a forbidden desire that Emily had planted and that would grow like a weed. "Of course," she replied, rising gracefully from the bed. The sheet slipped from her body, revealing her completely naked before him. Nathan averted his gaze, but Emily saw how his muscles contracted, how his fists closed in the fight against his own will. This never happened. When Nathan went down to the kitchen minutes later, he found Rebecca preparing coffee as she did every morning. She was wearing a nightgown identical to the one Emily had worn, and for a terrifying moment, he couldn't distinguish which of the two women was in front of him. Rebecca smiled and approached to hug him, but Nathan stiffened at her touch. "Did you sleep well, my love?" asked Rebecca, noticing his tension. "You seem different." There was something in her look, a shadow of suspicion that wasn't there before. Nathan wondered if she knew, if somehow she had discovered his betrayal. "Just tired from the trip," he lied, accepting the cup of coffee she offered him. But his hands trembled so much he almost dropped the porcelain. Rebecca observed every movement, every expression, storing everything in her memory. Emily came down for coffee 20 minutes later, wearing a simple robe, her hair tied in a loose bun. She greeted the couple naturally as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, Nathan. How was the trip?" Her voice was casual, but her eyes met his for a second longer than they should have. "Productive," he replied, avoiding her gaze. But Emily could feel the tension radiating from him like heat. She knew that every time he looked at Rebecca, he would remember what they had done. Guilt would be his constant companion, and Emily delighted in that thought. During the following days, the atmosphere in the mansion changed subtly. Nathan began to work until later, avoiding coming home. When he was present, he treated Rebecca with exaggerated gentleness, as if trying to compensate for his betrayal with grand gestures. He bought her expensive jewelry, arranged dinners at exclusive restaurants, filled the room with flowers. Rebecca, in turn, began to observe everything with different eyes. She noticed how Nathan avoided being alone with Emily, how his voice changed when she entered the room, how he always seemed about to flee. She began to notice small details she had previously ignored: a different perfume in the room, a lipstick mark on a towel, the way Emily observed her when she thought no one was watching. Emily, intoxicated by her victory, began to become bolder. She would pass by Nathan's office wearing clothes that accentuated her curves, always with an innocent excuse. She needed to sign documents, had questions about her legal fees, wanted to thank him for his generosity. But each visit was a delicious torture for both. One afternoon, when Rebecca was at the beauty salon, Emily entered the office without knocking. Nathan was on the phone closing an important deal. She approached slowly, circling the desk until she was behind him. When she placed her hands on his shoulders, he almost dropped the phone. "Sorry," she whispered, massaging his neck. "You look very tense." Her fingers found the exact points that relaxed him, and Nathan involuntarily closed his eyes. For a moment he forgot where he was, who she was, all the reasons why this was wrong. "Emily," he murmured, his voice laden with desire and despair. We can't what?" she asked, leaning in until her lips touched his ear. "We can't. Feel? We can't want? You want me, Nathan, I can feel it." He moved away abruptly, rising from the chair. "Stop," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "This is wrong. You're my wife's sister." "I'm her twin sister," she corrected, approaching again. "We're practically the same person. And you've already had me, remember? You've already tasted what I can offer." Her eyes gleamed with malice. "Tell me it wasn't good. Tell me you don't think about it every night." Nathan couldn't answer, because it was true. He thought about her constantly, relived every moment of that night, every touch, every moan, and he hated himself for it. The following weeks transformed into a dangerous game of seduction and resistance. Emily had planted a seed of desire that grew like fire in Nathan's chest, consuming his peace and his sanity. He tried to stay distant, but she seemed to always be present, always available, always reminding him of that night that had changed everything. Rebecca, in turn, began to notice subtle changes in her marriage. Nathan was more distant during their intimate moments, as if his mind were elsewhere. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she would find him on the balcony, drinking whiskey and staring into the void. When she asked what was bothering him, he always replied that it was just concerns about business. The tension reached its peak during a charity dinner at the Bradford Foundation. Nathan had insisted that Emily accompany them, a decision Rebecca found strange but didn't question. Her sister was stunning in a tight black dress that enhanced her curves, and Nathan had to make an effort not to stare at her all night. During the event, Emily behaved like the perfect sister-in-law, conversing with important guests, praising Rebecca and Nathan's social work. But when no one was looking, her fingers would brush his when passing a glass of champagne. Her eyes would linger on his face. Her lips would curve into smiles, laden with unspoken promises. "Your sister-in-law is charming," commented Helena Montero, one of the foundation's biggest donors. "Rebecca must be happy to have her around after so much time apart." "Yes," replied Rebecca, observing Emily animatedly conversing with Nathan about the foundation's projects. "Very happy." But there was a coldness in her voice that didn't go unnoticed by those who knew her well. The most dangerous moment of the night happened when Nathan went to the bathroom and Emily followed him, pretending she needed to touch up her makeup. They met in the deserted corridor, away from the curious gazes of the guests. "You look beautiful tonight," said Nathan, the words escaping before he could control them. The soft light of the corridor made Emily even more similar to Rebecca, and he felt that familiar confusion taking over his mind. "Thank you," she replied, approaching dangerously. "You're very elegant too. Rebecca is a lucky woman." Her hands adjusted his tie, an apparently innocent gesture that sent waves of desire throughout Nathan's body. "Emily," he murmured, but she placed a finger over his lips. "Shh," she whispered. Someone might hear, but her eyes said exactly the opposite of what her words suggested. She wanted him to lose control, to kiss her right there, to forget about everything and everyone. Nathan fought against all his instincts. Part of him wanted to push her against the wall and kiss her, with all the passion he had been repressing. Another part screamed that he had to stop this madness before it destroyed his marriage. In the end, it was the second voice that prevailed. "We need to go back," he said, moving away from her. "Rebecca will find our absence strange." Emily smiled, but there was a spark of frustration in her eyes. "Of course," she agreed. "We can't worry, dear Rebecca." The sarcasm in her voice was almost imperceptible, but Nathan caught it. The rest of the night passed in a fog of unresolved sexual tension. Nathan could barely concentrate on conversations, always aware of Emily's presence, of every movement she made, of every look she cast in his direction. Rebecca, observing everything with growing suspicion, began to connect the dots of a puzzle she preferred not to solve. On the way back home, the silence in the car was suffocating. Rebecca was seated next to Nathan, but Emily was in the back seat, and he could feel her eyes on him through the rearview mirror. Every time their gazes met, he felt an electric discharge run through his body. "The event was a success," commented Rebecca, trying to break the silence. "We raised more than we expected." "Yes," agreed Nathan distractedly. "A total success." "Emily was a great help," continued Rebecca, turning to her sister. "You have a knack for these social things." "I learned by watching you," replied Emily, with a sweet smile. "You were always the more talented of us two." The exchange of words seemed innocent, but there were layers of meaning that only the two sisters fully understood. It was as if they were fighting a silent battle, using smiles and compliments as weapons. When they arrived home, Nathan went straight to his office, claiming to have urgent work. Rebecca went up to the bedroom, but Emily remained in the living room, waiting. She knew Nathan would eventually come down, as he always did when he was disturbed. 2 hours later he appeared, wearing only a t-shirt and pajama pants. His hair was disheveled, and there was a tormented expression on his face. He headed to the bar, serving himself a generous dose of whiskey. "Can't sleep?" asked Emily, emerging from the shadows like a ghost. Nathan startled, almost dropping the glass. "You scared me," he said, his voice hoarse. "I thought everyone was already asleep." "I can't sleep either," she admitted, approaching slowly. "I keep thinking about things, moments I shouldn't remember." "Emily, please," he begged, but his voice lacked conviction. "Don't make this harder than it already is." "Hard for whom?" she asked, stopping right in front of him. "For you? For me? Or for Rebecca, who hasn't yet discovered that her perfect husband isn't so perfect after all?" The veiled threat in her words was like a punch to Nathan's stomach. "You wouldn't do that," he said, but there was fear in his eyes. Emily smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Wouldn't do what? Tell the truth? Tell my sister that I finally got something that was hers?" She moved even closer, until their bodies almost touched. "Or are you worried I'll tell her how you moaned my name that night?" "I didn't moan your name," he lied, but they both knew it wasn't true. "No?" she asked, leaning in until her lips almost touched his ear. "So you remember everything." Nathan couldn't resist anymore. Emily's proximity, the perfume she wore, the way her eyes shone in the half-light of the room, everything conspired against his sanity. He grabbed her by the shoulders, pushing her against the bar wall. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world stopped. "You're destroying me," he murmured, his voice laden with despair and desire. "I can't think of anything else. I can't sleep. I can't even touch my wife without thinking of you." Emily smiled, savoring every word as if it were champagne. "Good," she whispered, her hands moving up his chest, "because I can't think of anything else either. You marked me, Nathan. That night you marked me forever." He kissed her with all the repressed passion of the past weeks. It was a hungry, desperate kiss, laden with guilt and desire. Emily responded with equal intensity, their bodies pressing against each other as if trying to merge into one. When they finally separated, both were breathless. Nathan rested his forehead against hers, closing his eyes. "This is madness," he murmured. "We're playing with fire." "Then burn me," replied Emily, her hands exploring his body with growing familiarity. "Burn with me." They made love right there, against the bar wall, with the urgency of those who knew they were committing a sin. It was different from the first time. Now Nathan knew exactly who she was, and that made everything even more intense and forbidden. Afterward, as they dressed in silence, reality came crashing back with full force. Nathan ran his hands through his hair, guilt consuming him again. "We can't do this anymore," he said, but his voice sounded weak even to himself. "We can and we will," replied Emily with confidence. "Because you want me as much as I want you, and because now you know I'm not just a substitute for Rebecca. I am myself, and you desire me for who I am." It was true, and Nathan hated to admit it. There was something in Emily that Rebecca didn't. Have to an intensity, a hunger, a darkness that attracted him like a magnet. Rebecca was light, purity, goodness. Emily was shadow, danger, destructive passion, and he was addicted. The secret meetings became routine. Nathan invented excuses to work late, and Emily always appeared in the office with some pretext. Sometimes they made love on the mahogany desk, other times on the leather sofa, always with the awareness that Rebecca was at home, waiting for him. The guilt was killing Nathan inside. He tried to compensate by being even more attentive to Rebecca, but she began to notice that there was something forced in his kindness. His kisses seemed like apologies, his gifts seemed like bribes, his love seemed too desperate. One night, when Nathan arrived home especially late, he found Rebecca awake, in the living room, waiting for him. She was sitting in the armchair, still wearing her silk robe, a glass of red wine in her hands. "We need to talk," she said, her voice strangely calm. Nathan felt his stomach freeze. "About what?" he asked, trying to sound natural, but his voice came out tense. "About what's happening with you," replied Rebecca, standing up. "About what's happening with us." She approached him, studying his face. "You're different, Nathan, distant, as if you had something weighing on your conscience." "I'm just stressed with work," he lied, but avoided her gaze. "Is that so?" Rebecca placed her hand on his chest over his heart. "Your heart is racing, you're nervous," her eyes narrowed. "Or guilty." Nathan felt as if the floor would open beneath his feet. "Rebecca, You've been spending a lot of time with Emily lately?" she continued, her voice still calm but with a coldness he had never heard before. "Work meetings, legal issues, always some excuse to be alone." "She's your sister," said Nathan, trying to sound indignant. "I'm just trying to help her." "I know very well who she is," replied Rebecca, and there was something in her voice that made Nathan tremble. "The question is, do you know?" Before Nathan could answer, Emily appeared on the stairs wearing only a transparent nightgown. "Sorry," she said, feigning embarrassment. "I heard voices and thought there might be some problem." Rebecca turned to her sister, and Nathan saw something he had never seen before in his wife's gaze. It was absolute coldness, a total absence of human warmth. "There's no problem at all," said Rebecca. "Just a conversation between husband and wife." "Of course," replied Emily, but her eyes met Nathan's for a second. "Well, good night then." She went up the stairs, swaying her hips exaggeratedly. When they were alone again, Rebecca turned to Nathan. "Tell me something," she asked, her voice dangerously low. "When you look at her, what do you see?" "I see your sister," he replied, but his voice didn't sound convincing. "Lie," said Rebecca. "You see the woman who betrayed you. You see the woman who got something that not even I got." "What are you talking about?" asked Nathan, but his heart was pounding in his chest. Rebecca smiled, but it was a humorless smile. "You think I don't know? You think I don't notice how you look at her? How she looks at you?" She moved even closer until their faces were inches apart. "You two are terrible actors." Nathan wanted to deny, wanted to lie, wanted to do anything, to erase that expression from Rebecca's face, but the words wouldn't come. Guilt had finally found its voice. "Rebecca, I can explain." "No," she interrupted him, placing a finger over his lips. "Not yet. First, I have some things to find out about my dear sister." Her eyes shone with a determination Nathan had never seen before. "And then, we're going to have a very long conversation about the future of our marriage." Rebecca didn't wait until morning to begin her investigation. As soon as Nathan went up to the office, she went straight to Emily's room. She didn't knock on the door, she simply entered, finding her sister lying on the bed, flipping through a magazine. "We need to talk," said Rebecca, closing the door behind her. Her voice was calm, but there was an authority in it that Emily had never heard before. "About what?" asked Emily, trying to sound innocent, but Rebecca could see the tension in her shoulders. "About you and my husband," replied Rebecca directly. "And don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about." Emily sat up on the bed, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Ah," she said, and all the facade of innocence disappeared. "You finally found out." The coldness in Emily's voice was like a slap to Rebecca's face. She had expected denials, tears, apologies, not this cruel and satisfied admission. "How long?" asked Rebecca, her voice strangely controlled. "Since the night he returned from Dubai," replied Emily, rising from the bed. "Poor Nathan, he was so tired, so needy, and I was there, available." She approached Rebecca, her eyes gleaming with malice. "You should have seen how he touched me, how he sighed my name." "He thought you were me," said Rebecca, but her voice trembled slightly. "At the beginning, yes," agreed Emily, "but after he knew exactly who I was, and yet he still desired me, yet he still came back to me night after night." The revelation hit Rebecca like a stab. One thing was a one-night betrayal, a mistake caused by confusion and exhaustion. Another thing entirely was a deliberate, prolonged, conscious affair. "Why?" asked Rebecca, and for the first time her voice broke. "Why did you do this? I welcomed you, helped you, treated you like family." "Family?" Emily laughed, a bitter sound full of resentment. "You treated me like charity, like the poor sister who needed to be saved by the rich and successful sister." Her eyes narrowed. "All our lives you had everything. Our father's love, the best education, the best suitors, and now you have the most desired man in the country." "I didn't choose to be born first," said Rebecca, tears beginning to form. "I didn't choose to be the chosen one." "But I chose to take back what should have been mine," replied Emily. "And you know something? It was easier than I imagined. Your perfect husband isn't so perfect after all. He has hunger, Rebecca. A hunger that you, with all your purity and goodness, never managed to satisfy." Rebecca sat heavily in the room's armchair, Emily's words echoing in her mind. Part of her wanted to deny, wanted to believe that Nathan was being manipulated. But another part, the part that had noticed the changes in him, knew that Emily was speaking the truth. "What do you want?" Rebecca finally asked. "I want what I've always wanted," replied Emily. "I want Nathan. I want this house. I want the life you have." She moved even closer, crouching in front of Rebecca. "And you know something, I'm going to get it, because now he knows me, desires me, loves me in a way he never loved you." "He doesn't love you," said Rebecca, but her voice sounded weak. "No?" Emily smiled. "Then why does he moan my name when he's with me? Why does he touch me as if I were the only woman in the world? Why does he invent excuses to stay away from you and close to me?" Each word was a sharp blade, cutting what remained of Rebecca's confidence. She stood up abruptly, heading to the door. "Where are you going?" asked Emily. "To do what I should have done a long time ago," replied Rebecca, turning to her sister. "Find out who you really are." Rebecca spent the rest of the morning in her private office making calls. She had contacts throughout New York, people who owed her favors, private investigators who worked for the foundation. If Emily had secrets, she would discover them. The first call was to Helen, the aunt who had raised Emily. The woman was reluctant to speak, but Rebecca was persuasive. What she discovered left her cold. "Emily was always different," said Helen. "Even as a child, she had an unhealthy fixation on her sister. She collected photos of you, practiced your signature, imitated your voice. I thought it was admiration, but now I see it was obsession." "Obsession?" repeated Rebecca. "She said that one day she would take your place," continued Helen. "That you didn't deserve to have everything while she had nothing. I tried to correct her, but she was stubborn and dangerous." "Dangerous how?" There was a long pause before Helen answered. "She had several relationships over the years. Married, men mainly. She said she liked taking what belonged to other women." Another pause. "Rebecca, there's something you need to know about her last relationship." Rebecca held the phone more tightly. "What?" "She got involved with a married man, a local businessman. When the wife found out, she threatened to expose Emily publicly. A few days later, the woman had an accident." "What kind of accident?" "Fell down the stairs at home, died instantly." Helen took a deep breath. They could never prove anything. "But Emily disappeared from town right after. That's when she sought you out." Rebecca hung up the phone with trembling hands. The woman she had welcomed into her home wasn't just an envious sister. She was a predator, a woman capable of anything to get what she wanted. The second call was to a private investigator. I need you to find out everything about Emily Clark, she said. Everything. Relationships, debts, criminal records, everything. How much time do I have? Asked the investigator. 48 hours, replied Rebecca, and absolute discretion. Meanwhile, Emily was in Nathan's office, sitting on his lap while he tried to work. She had appeared with an excuse about documents, but it had soon transformed into a seduction session. Rebecca suspects, said Nathan, trying to concentrate on the papers in front of him, but the distraction of Emily's hands on his chest made it impossible. I know, replied Emily, kissing his neck. We talked this morning. Nathan pushed her away, alarmed. You talked about what? About us, said Emily simply. About how you desire me more than you ever desired her. Emily, this is going to destroy my marriage, said Nathan. But even as he spoke, his hands moved to her hips. Your marriage is already destroyed, replied Emily. The question now is to choose. Stay with a woman who will never forgive you, or stay with the woman who makes you feel alive. Nathan kissed her then, with all the desperate passion of a man who knew he was lost. But as he surrendered to desire, he didn't see the expression of cold triumph on Emily's face, nor did he notice that she had deliberately left the door ajar. And he didn't see Rebecca standing in the hallway, observing everything with eyes that now shone with an icy determination. Rebecca made no noise as she moved away from the door. Her bare feet slid silently across the marble of the hallway as the image of Nathan and Emily was branded in her mind like hot iron. There were no more doubts, no more hopes that it was all a misunderstanding. The betrayal was real, conscious, and cruel. 2 hours later, the private investigator called with preliminary information. Mrs. Bradford, I found some interesting things about Emily Clark. She used at least 3 different names in the last 5 years. She has lawsuits for fraud in 2 towns upstate. Continue, said Rebecca, her voice strangely calm. There's also a history of involvement with married men, always followed by blackmail or extortion, and there's something else. The investigator hesitated. She was admitted to a psychiatric clinic for 6 months 3 years ago, diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder with paranoid traits. Rebecca closed her eyes. The woman she had welcomed into her home wasn't just an envious sister. She was an unstable, dangerous person, capable of anything to get what she wanted. And now she wanted Nathan. I need all of this documented, said Rebecca. Medical reports, court cases, everything. I'm already arranging it, replied the investigator. But ma'am, if I may suggest, perhaps it would be better to involve the police. Not yet, said Rebecca. First, I'll give her an opportunity to leave on her own. When Nathan came down for dinner that night, he found only Rebecca at the dining table. She was impeccable, as always, wearing a navy blue dress that enhanced her eyes, her hair tied in an elegant bun. Where's Emily? He asked, trying to sound casual. She went out, replied Rebecca, delicately cutting the salmon on her plate. Said she had some business to take care of in the city. Nathan nodded, but there was tension in his shoulders. Emily's absence made him uneasy in a way he hated to admit. He had become accustomed to her constant presence, to the ever-present possibility of intimate encounters. Nathan, said Rebecca, putting down her utensils, I need to tell you something. He looked up, and what he saw on his wife's face made him freeze. There was a coldness there he had never seen before, a determination that frightened him. I know about you and Emily, she said simply. Nathan felt as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. Rebecca, No, she interrupted him. Let me finish. She stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the garden. I know about the first night when you returned from Dubai. I know about the meetings in your office. I know about everything. How? Asked Nathan, his voice just a whisper. Because I've been your wife for 5 years, Nathan. I know every expression of yours, every change in your behavior. She turned to him. And because I saw you together this afternoon. The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan wanted to deny, wanted to lie, wanted to do anything to erase that expression from Rebecca's face, but the words wouldn't come. I'm sorry, he finally said, his voice broken. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to happen, she repeated, and there was cold anger in her voice. "You betrayed our marriage, Nathan. Not once, but several times. With my own sister. In our house. In our bed." "It wasn't in our bed," said Nathan, immediately realizing how pathetic that sounded. "Oh, what a relief," replied Rebecca with sarcasm. "At least you had the decency not to desecrate our room." Nathan stood up, trying to approach her. "Rebecca, please let me explain." "Explain what?" she asked, moving away from him. "Explain how you confused my sister with me? Explain how this transformed into an affair? Explain how you look me in the eyes every day and lie?" "I love you," said Nathan, desperate. "I love you, Rebecca. Emily was a mistake. A temporary madness." "Temporary madness?" Rebecca laughed, but it was a sound without humor. "Months of betrayal are temporary madness. Sex sessions in your office are temporary madness." Her eyes narrowed. "Or are you referring to the fact that Emily isn't exactly who you think she is?" Nathan's expression changed. "What are you talking about?" "About the fact that Emily is a criminal," said Rebecca, returning to the table and picking up a folder. "About the fact that she's done this before, seducing married men, destroying families, extorting money." She threw the folder on the table. "About the fact that she's a diagnosed sociopath who spent 6 months in a psychiatric institution." Nathan picked up the folder with trembling hands, leafing through the documents. With each page, his expression grew paler. There were lawsuits for fraud, medical reports, testimonies from ex-lovers who had been blackmailed. "This can't be real," he murmured. "It's very real," replied Rebecca. "The woman for whom you destroyed our marriage is a criminal, and you were just another target." Nathan sat heavily in the chair, the folder falling from his hands. "My God," he whispered, "what have I done?" "You chose to believe her lies," said Rebecca. "You chose desire over love. You chose destruction over construction." "Rebecca, please," begged Nathan. "There has to be a way to fix this. I'll send Emily away. I'll do anything." "Too late," said Rebecca, and there were finally tears in her eyes. "You betrayed me, Nathan, not just with your body, but with your heart. You made me question my own sanity, made me feel as if I were imagining things." "I can change," said Nathan, standing up and trying to touch her. "I can be better. We can overcome this." "Can we?" asked Rebecca, allowing him to take her hands. "Can you touch me without thinking of her? Can you kiss me without comparing? Can you make love to me without remembering what you did together?" Nathan couldn't answer, because they both knew what the truth was. Emily had become an obsession, an addiction he couldn't quit. Even knowing who she really was, even seeing the evidence of her lies, he still desired her. "Where is she now?" asked Rebecca. "I don't know," admitted Nathan. "She said she had business to take care of." "Lie," said Rebecca. "She's waiting. Waiting to see how you'll react to all this. Waiting to see if you'll choose her or me." As if she'd been invoked by her words, the dining room door opened and Emily entered. She was more beautiful than ever, wearing a tight red dress that accentuated every curve of her body. Her eyes shone with a dangerous intensity. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, but there was a smile on her lips. "But I heard raised voices and was concerned." "No need to pretend anymore," said Rebecca, her voice icy. "I know who you are. I know about your past, about your crimes, about your mental illness." Emily laughed, a crystalline and frightening sound. "Ah, you finally found out. Congratulations, little sister. It took you a while, but you got there." "You're crazy," said Nathan, standing up. "All of this was a lie." "Not everything," replied Emily, approaching him. "My desire for you is real. My love for you is real, and you know that because you feel the same." "I feel nothing for you," lied Nathan, but his voice trembled. "No?" Emily smiled, touching his face. "Then why are you trembling? Why is your heart racing? Why can't you take your eyes off me?" It was true. Even knowing who she was, even seeing the evidence of her lies, Nathan still felt that magnetic attraction. It was as if she had cast a spell over him. "Get out of my house," said Rebecca, her voice sharp as a blade. "Now." "Your house?" Emily turned to her sister, her eyes gleaming with malice. "I thought we were family. I thought you loved me." "I did," admitted Rebecca. But that was before I discovered you're a monster. Monster? Emily laughed again. I'm just a woman who knows what she wants, and I want Nathan. Emily's smile widened when she saw the expression of shock on Nathan's face. You really thought I was here by chance? She asked, slowly walking around the dining table like a predator circling its prey. That all of this was just a happy coincidence? What are you talking about? Asked Nathan, although a part of him already knew the answer. I planned everything, replied Emily, her voice laden with sick pride. Every encounter, every touch, every moan. I spent 2 years studying you, Nathan. 2 years learning your habits, your fears, your deepest desires. Rebecca felt her stomach turn. You spied on us? Spied is a very ugly word, said Emily, stopping, behind Nathan's chair and placing her hands on his shoulders. I prefer to say I was preparing myself. You have no idea how many times I observed you through the window, how many photos I took, how many videos I recorded. You are completely crazy, murmured Nathan, but he didn't move away from her touch. Crazy for you, corrected Emily, leaning in to whisper in his ear. And you're crazy for me, too. You can deny it all you want, but your body doesn't lie. Her hands slid across his chest. You tremble when I touch you. Your breathing quickens when I'm near. You desire me even knowing who I am. Stop, said Nathan, but his voice sounded weak. Why would I stop? Asked Emily, kissing his neck. When? It's working so well? When you're finally waking up to what you really want? I know what you want, said Rebecca, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. You want my life, my husband, my house, my identity, but you won't get it. Emily moved away from Nathan, turning to Rebecca with an icy smile. I won't get it? Are you sure about that? She laughed, a sound that made Rebecca's blood freeze. Because I have a surprise for you both. What surprise? Asked Rebecca, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Emily placed her hands on her belly, caressing it with theatrical gestures. I'm pregnant, she said, and the silence that followed was absolute. Nathan stood up so abruptly that the chair fell backward. That's not possible, he said, but his voice trembled. Isn't it? Emily smiled, taking a blood test from her purse. 6 weeks, right around the time of our first encounter, Nathan. Remember? When you made me a woman. Rebecca felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. A pregnancy changed everything. Even if she managed to expel Emily from her house, even if she managed to save her marriage, there would always be a child linking Nathan to that woman. Did you plan this too? Asked Nathan, his voice laden with horror. Of course I planned. It, replied Emily. You think I would leave our passion to chance? I stopped taking birth control weeks before you returned from Dubai. I wanted to ensure you could never forget me. You're sick, said Rebecca, rising from the table. You're completely sick. I'm passionate, corrected Emily. And now, Nathan, you have a choice to make. You can stay with your cold and perfect wife, who will never be able to forgive you, or you can choose the woman who carries your child. Nathan ran his hands through his hair, clearly desperate. This can't be happening, he murmured. This can't be real. It's very real, said Emily, approaching him again, and you know which is the right choice. You know you desire me, that you love me, that you'll never be able to forget me. I don't love you, said Nathan, but his voice lacked conviction. No? Emily pressed her body against his. Then why are you trembling? Why can't you push me away? It was true. Even knowing who she was, even seeing the malice in her eyes, Nathan still felt that magnetic attraction. It was as if she had some power over him, some control he couldn't break. I'll give one last chance to you. Both, said Rebecca, her voice strangely calm. Nathan, you have until tomorrow to decide. Either you choose our marriage and Emily leaves and never comes back, or you choose her and I'll leave. Rebecca, no, said Nathan, finally managing to move away from Emily. Don't make me choose like this. You already chose, replied Rebecca. Every time you touched her, every time you lied to me, every time you preferred to be with her rather than with me, I'm just making official what has already happened. And if I choose you? Asked Nathan. If I send Emily away? Then we'll try to rebuild what you destroyed, said Rebecca. But it will be difficult, Nathan, it will be very difficult. And if he chooses me? Asked Emily, her eyes gleaming with excitement. What happens then? Then you win, admitted Rebecca. You get what you always wanted, my husband, my house, my life. And my child, added Emily, caressing her belly. Don't forget my child. The mention of the child was like a stab to Rebecca's heart. She and Nathan had tried to have children for years, without success. And now Emily was pregnant, after just a few weeks of an affair. There's one thing you both need to know, said Rebecca, her voice gaining a hardness that neither had heard before. I won't fight for you, Nathan. I won't beg, I won't make a scene, I won't try to compete with her. Rebecca. No, she interrupted him. If you choose me, it has to be because you love me, because you want to be with me, because you recognize that what we had is worth more than this sick passion. And if he doesn't choose me, asked Emily, for the first time seeming less confident, then you'll have to deal with the consequences, said Rebecca. Because I won't just exit the scene, Emily. I'll ensure everyone knows who you really are. Your criminal record, your mental instability, everything. You wouldn't do that, said Emily, but there was fear in her voice. Try me, replied Rebecca. Say if I wouldn't. The silence that followed was laden with tension. Emily looked at Nathan with pleading eyes, trying to regain the control she felt slipping between her fingers. Nathan looked at the two women, clearly divided between duty and desire. I need to think, he finally said. I need time to process all this. You have until tomorrow, repeated Rebecca, at noon. Then I want your answer. And if I can't decide? Asked Nathan. Then I'll decide for you, replied Rebecca, and you won't like my decision. Emily approached Nathan once more, placing her hand on his arm. You know which is the right choice, she whispered. You know you love me. You know we're made for each other. Nathan looked at her, then at Rebecca, then at her again. The woman who carried his child, who had awakened passions he didn't know existed, who had turned his life upside down. And the woman who had been his companion for 5 years, who knew his fears and dreams, who had built a life with him. I'm going to the office, he finally said. I need to be alone to think. Don't take too long, said Emily, smiling. Our baby is waiting for an answer. When Nathan left, the two sisters were alone in the dining room. The air was laden with hatred and resentment. You really think you've won? Asked Rebecca. I don't think, replied Emily. I know. He chose me the moment he first touched me. Everything that comes after is just a formality. We'll see, said Rebecca, and there was a dark promise in her voice. We'll see. Nathan spent the entire night in his office, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. The bottle of whiskey he had opened was half empty, but the alcohol couldn't calm the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Emily's face, felt the warmth of her body, remembered the forbidden pleasure he had experienced in her arms. But he also saw Rebecca's hurt look, the disappointment in her eyes, the love he had trampled. At 5 in the morning, when the first rays of sun began to appear on the horizon, Nathan finally admitted the truth to himself. He was obsessed with Emily. It wasn't love, it was something darker, more destructive. It was a passion that consumed him, that made him question everything he had always believed about himself. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Rebecca also couldn't sleep. She was in her private office, making the last calls to her lawyers, organizing documents, preparing for all possibilities. If Nathan chose Emily, she was ready to leave, but she wouldn't leave empty-handed, and she wouldn't let Emily win easily. Emily, for her part, was in her room, caressing her still flat belly. She knew she had lied about the pregnancy. The blood test was forged, a skill she had learned in her years of scams. But the lie would serve her purpose. Nathan was an honorable man, and the idea of abandoning a child would destroy him inside. At 10 in the morning, Nathan returned home. He was exhausted, with wrinkled clothes and red eyes. He found Rebecca in the living room, impeccably dressed, as if she were preparing for an important meeting. Have you reached a decision? She asked, without raising her eyes from the document she was reading. Rebecca, Nathan sat heavily in the armchair in front of her. I don't know how to explain what's happening to me. You don't need to explain, said Rebecca finally, looking at him. I understand. She's like a drug, isn't she? You know she's harmful, but you can't stop. The precision of Rebecca's analysis surprised him. That's exactly it, he admitted. I know she's dangerous, I know she lied about everything, but still... Still you desire her, Rebecca completed. Still you can't get her out of your head. I love you, said Nathan, desperate. I've always loved you. But what I feel for her is different. It's intense, destructive. I can't control it. I know, said Rebecca, her voice surprisingly gentle. And that's exactly why you need to choose, because this kind of obsession won't pass. It will only get worse. What would you do? Asked Nathan. If you were me, what would you do? I would choose real love, replied Rebecca. I would choose construction instead of destruction. I would choose partnership instead of obsession. She leaned forward. But I'm not you, Nathan. You need to decide what you want for your life. At that moment, Emily appeared at the door of the room, wearing a white dress that made her look almost angelic. Sorry, she said in a sweet voice. I didn't want to interrupt, but... She placed her hand on her belly. Our baby is making me nauseous. I need to go to the doctor. Nathan stood up immediately. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I just need you, said Emily, extending her hand to him. Will you come with me? Nathan looked at Rebecca, then at Emily, clearly divided. Go, said Rebecca. Go with her. But remember, you still have until noon to decide. On the way to the doctor's office, Emily kept Nathan's hand intertwined with hers. You're thinking too much, she said. You're complicating something that should be simple. Simple? Nathan laughed bitterly. You call this simple? You love me, said Emily. I love you. We're expecting a child. What else matters? And Rebecca? Asked Nathan. Rebecca will be fine, replied Emily. She's strong, independent. She always has been. She doesn't need you like I need you. You don't need me, said Nathan. You want me. It's different. Is it? Emily turned to him, her eyes shining intensely. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe I'm the woman you always wanted, but never knew you wanted? That maybe Rebecca was just a tamed version of what you really desired? Emily's words echoed in Nathan's mind. Was there some truth to them? Had he always felt that something was missing in his relationship with Rebecca, a passion, an intensity he could never name? In the doctor's office, as they waited to be seen, Nathan observed Emily. She was radiant, touching her belly with loving gestures, smiling at him as if they were a normal couple expecting their first child. For a moment, he managed to imagine a life with her. It would be tumultuous, intense, full of passion and drama. It would be the opposite of everything he had, built with Rebecca. Next patient, called the nurse. Emily stood up, but Nathan held her by the arm. Wait, he said. Before we go in, I need to ask you something. What? Are you really pregnant? Emily blinked, clearly surprised by the question. Of course I am. Why would you ask that? Because I know you, said Nathan. I know you're capable of lying about anything to get what you want. You're offending me, said Emily, but there was something in her eyes that confirmed Nathan's suspicions. Show me the test, he said, extending his hand. I already showed you. Show me the original, insisted Nathan. Not a copy, the original. Emily hesitated, and in that hesitation, Nathan had his answer. You lied, he said, feeling a mixture of relief and betrayal. You lied about the pregnancy. Nathan, I can explain. No, he said, standing up. You can't. Because there's no explanation for this. You used a lie about a child to manipulate me. I did it for love, said Emily, desperate. I did it because I love you and knew it was the only way to have you. This isn't love, said Nathan, finally understanding. This is obsession. This is sickness. He left the doctor's office, leaving Emily alone. For the first time since she had arrived at the mansion, she felt truly defeated. Her greatest weapon had been discovered, and now she had nothing left. Nathan drove, back home in silence, his mind finally clear. The lie about the pregnancy had been like a bucket of cold water, awakening him from his obsession. He could see Emily for what she really was, A desperate woman capable of anything to get what she wanted. When he arrived home, he found Rebecca where he had left her, reading documents in the living room. She looked up when he entered, and he saw a silent question in her gaze. "She lied about the pregnancy," said Nathan, sitting next to his wife. "It was all a lie." Rebecca nodded as if she already knew. "I figured it would be. It was too perfect to be true." "Rebecca," said Nathan, taking her hands, "I choose you. I choose our marriage. I choose real love." "Are you sure?" asked Rebecca. "Because if you stay, it has to be forever. I can't go through this again." "I'm sure," said Nathan. "I was blind, obsessed, but now I can see clearly. You're the woman I love. You're the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with." Rebecca studied his face for a long moment, looking for signs of doubt or hesitation. When she found none, she nodded. "Then Emily has to leave," she said. "Today?" "I'll talk to her," said Nathan. "No," said Rebecca. "I'll talk to her. This is between sisters." Emily arrived home 2 hours later, finding her bags packed at the main entrance. Rebecca was standing next to them, elegant and impassive, like a queen dismissing an unwanted subject. "So you know then," said Emily, trying to keep her voice firm, but there was defeat in her eyes. "I know everything," replied Rebecca. "The fake pregnancy, the forged documents, the lies, everything." She approached her sister. "But mainly I know that Nathan chose me." "He only chose me because of the supposed pregnancy," said Emily, a last attempt to hurt Rebecca. "So that he would have stayed with me." "No," said Rebecca with confidence. "He chose me because he finally saw you for what you really are. A desperate woman, capable of anything to get what she wants." Emily laughed, but it was a broken sound. "You think you've won? You think this is over?" "I know it's over," replied Rebecca, "because you're leaving now and you'll never come back. And if you try to contact us, if you try to cause any problems, I'll ensure everyone knows who you really are." "You can't expel me," said Emily, but her voice lacked conviction. "This is my family too." "Family?" Rebecca laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't try to destroy the life of those they love." She moved even closer. "You never loved me, Emily. You hated me from the day we were born." "It's true," admitted Emily, and for the first time her mask fell completely. "I hated you all my life. I hated your perfection, your luck, your ease in getting everything I wanted." "And now," asked Rebecca, "do you still hate me?" Emily looked at her sister for a long moment. "Now I envy you even more," she finally said, "because you have something I'll never have." "What?" "The capacity to truly love," replied Emily. "You truly love Nathan. It's not obsession, it's not possession, it's real love, and I don't know how to love like that." It was the first time Emily had shown anything resembling vulnerability, and for a moment, Rebecca felt sorry for her. "You can learn," she said gently. "You can get help. You can change." "No," said Emily, shaking her head. "I can't. I am like this, Rebecca. I always have been, and I won't change." Nathan appeared at the door, observing the scene. His eyes met Emily's, and she saw that there was no more desire there. There was pity, perhaps even disgust. The obsession had broken. Completely. "Your bags are ready," he said, his voice formal. "I've provided enough money for you to establish yourself anywhere you want, far from here." "Always the gentleman," said Emily bitterly, "even when you're expelling me." "I'm not expelling you," said Nathan. "I'm giving you a chance to start over, to do things right this time." Emily picked up one of the bags, then stopped. "Can I ask one last question?" "You can," said Rebecca. "Can you forgive me someday?" Rebecca thought for a long moment. "I don't know," she finally said. "Maybe, but not today, and not soon." "That's fair," said Emily. She turned to Nathan. "And you? Can you forgive me?" "I can try," said Nathan. "But you need to go away. You need to leave us in peace." "I will," promised Emily. "But know that I really loved you, Nathan. In my sick and obsessive way, but I loved you." "I know," said Nathan, "and that's why I'm letting you go instead of calling the police." Emily nodded, picking up the rest of her bags. At the door, she turned one. "Last time." "Be happy," she said, and for the first time she seemed sincere. "You deserve it." And then she was gone, disappearing into the New York afternoon, as if she had never existed. Nathan and Rebecca remained alone at the entrance of the mansion, the silence extending between them. There was so much to be said, so much to be healed. "And now?" asked Nathan. "Now we try to rebuild," said Rebecca. "It will be difficult. It will take time. But if you really love me, if you really chose me, then it's worth trying." "I love you," said Nathan, pulling her into his arms. "I truly love you, Rebecca, not in the obsessive way I felt for Emily, but with something deeper, more real." "I love you too," said Rebecca, allowing herself to be embraced. "But we need time. We need therapy. We need to rebuild trust. We'll do whatever is necessary," promised Nathan, "for as long as necessary." 6 months later, Nathan and Rebecca were in couples therapy, working through the scars left by the betrayal. It wasn't easy. There were days when Rebecca still doubted, moments when Nathan still felt guilty. But slowly, step by step, they were rebuilding their relationship on a more solid foundation. "Do you still think about her?" asked Rebecca one night, lying in bed. "Sometimes," admitted Nathan. "But not in the way you think. I think of her as a reminder of what I almost lost, of what I almost destroyed." "I think about her too," said Rebecca, "and I wonder if she's okay, if she got the help she needs." "You're very generous," said Nathan, kissing her forehead. "More generous than I would be." "She's my sister," said Rebecca. "Even after everything, she's still my sister." A year later, they received a letter. It was from Emily, postmarked from a small town in upstate New York. She wrote that she was in treatment, that she had found honest work, that she was trying to learn to live without hurting others. "She didn't ask for forgiveness," noted Nathan, reading the letter. "No," agreed Rebecca, "but she acknowledged what she did. It's a start." "Will you respond?" "Maybe," said Rebecca. "Someday, when I'm ready." 2 years after Emily's departure, Nathan and Rebecca renewed their vows in a small, intimate ceremony. It was a new beginning, a promise that true love could survive even the cruelest betrayals. "Do you regret it?" asked Rebecca on the night of the renewed wedding. "Betraying you? Every day," replied Nathan. "Fighting for our marriage? Never. Even knowing there will always be a shadow between us." "Shadows make us appreciate the light more," said Nathan, pulling her closer. "And you are my light, Rebecca. You always have been." They kissed under the stars in the garden of their mansion, two survivors of a storm that had almost destroyed them. Their love was no longer innocent. It had been tested by the fire of betrayal and obsession, but it was stronger now, more conscious, more precious. And somewhere in upstate New York, Emily Clark was learning a lesson that had taken a lifetime. To understand that true love cannot be stolen, cannot be forged, cannot be won through lies and manipulation. It can only be freely given by someone who chooses to love you back. The story of the Clark sisters had ended not with revenge or destruction, but with redemption. And sometimes, on the quietest nights, when the wind blew through the open windows, Rebecca still thought of Emily and wished that one day she would find her own version of true love. Not stolen, not forged, but real and deserved.